Welcome to One-on-One with Parents Canada, where we dive into topics that parents Google the most. On today's menu, we're going to be talking about birthday party planning. So much has changed since the arrival of COVID-19 with respect to how we celebrate and how we plan parties. And so we're going to talk about what is happening in terms of post-pandemic when it comes to birthday party planning. To help us navigate this topic, we're joined by Tanya Todd. She is the founder of Bug and Bird Events. She's been in the birthday party planning world for over a decade, and she's also the mother of 3 children. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I have to tell you, I love planning birthday parties, so this is right in my wheelhouse, but it's not something that everybody is interested in. Can you tell us with respect to COVID-19 and post-pandemic, what are some general tips that you can offer for parents?
Well, first of all, yay for birthday parties that they're coming back. I think it's really important that we celebrate those milestones now, especially since kids have missed basically their birthday parties for 2 years. And yeah, some people love to do it and some people not so much. But I would say, when you're starting out planning, the first thing probably is to start with just having a conversation with the birthday boy or girl. What are their interests? What do they like doing? And then kind of figuring out, do you want to rent a space, or are you going to do it in your home? What is the guest list going to look like? It's definitely, I think kids really want to be with their friends. I think they want to be social now, especially since that has been, off the table for so long. So it's very exciting. I would, definitely checklist. And you want to look at what your budget is. How long do you want to have your birthday party?
Well, speaking of budget, let's talk about etiquette. And when I talk about budget and etiquette, we're talking about what is the appropriate amount of money to spend on a gift these days, because that may have changed as well.
Yeah, for buying a gift for a birthday recipient, I think it really depends on how well you know the person. So I would say the average range is like $20 to $50. But if you're best friends, maybe you want to spend a little bit more. And then it also depends, I hate to say it, but it also depends on if they've given you, if someone gave you, your son or daughter, a $50 gift and you give them, a $10 gift card, it kind of doesn't equal itself out. So it's just, you can use your discretion. But I would say generally $20 to $50 is probably a good amount.
So also with respect to gifts, a lot of people just don't, they put on the invitation, no gifts allowed.
Yeah.
And you can make a donation to a charity, those kinds of things. What is your thought on that?
So every kid loves to get gifts. So it breaks my heart when I hear that they don't get anything for their birthday. I agree it's nice to give a charitable donation. And there definitely are some organizations now set up where you can put on the invitation, this is what the child wants to get, and some of that money will go to that gift, and so it'll be a bigger gift, and then the other portion will go to some charitable donation, a foundation that maybe your son or daughter is interested in. So maybe it is, World Wildlife Federation, or Save the Pandas, or whatever it is. So there are organizations that do that, but I really do think it's nice for the birthday recipient to get something.
Now, if they get something that they can hold in their hands, when is it appropriate for them to open their gifts?
I would suggest to do that after all the guests have gone. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I've had this happen in my own home where my son has received 5 of the same gifts. Luckily, we did it when no one was around, but by the 4th time he opened it, he was like, oh, Minecraft again. So you kind of want to avoid that situation, especially, when you've got the guests there. You don't want them to feel bad. And then also maybe one family, couldn't afford to get the really fancy schmancy gift. So it would make the child feel, a bit upset if they open their gift and the recipient kind of goes, oh, socks, so it's kind of, personally I would think wait till everyone's gone and then you can take your time. Normally what we do is we write on the card what the gift was, so we know what so-and-so gave, so that we can say thank you afterwards for the gift. And definitely, because if you have everybody sitting too, depending on the age, then they get kind of bored, right? If you've got 25 gifts you've got to open, by the 7th one, they're doing something else. So I would suggest doing it afterwards.
Now, speaking of thank you notes, are they a must?
I think it's nice to get a thank you note. Again, depends on the age of the child. So if you've had your child's 4, clearly they're not going to write a thank you note, but they could draw a picture, or you can send a text even just to say thank you. One thing that I like to do is when you give the goodie bag or the loop bag, just attach a thank you card to that, like a little tag that says, thank you for coming. And so then you've said thank you. So you don't have to do a separate thank you on top of that.
So on that note, what happens if your child cannot attend a party that he or she's invited to? Are they still on the hook for a gift?
I would say probably not. Again, depends how well they know them. If it's like their best friend, you may want to give a gift, but if it's somebody that, again, just someone from a class that they're not so close to, I would say probably it's not necessary to give a gift.
Now, when we're talking about invitations, this can get very complicated in a hurry,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So what are we looking at in terms of etiquette around inviting a whole class, all that kind of stuff?
This one, I get asked this a lot. There's a sort of a rule of thumb that I use for the younger kids where it's basically their age plus 1. So if your child is 4, 5 is probably the limit of kids you want in your house or at a party, because it can be a little bit overwhelming. As the kids get older, you can invite more friends. I would say if you're going to invite everybody in the class but 3, you probably should just invite everybody in the class, because you think about how would my son or daughter feel if they were one of the 3 that wasn't invited. And again, it really depends on what the activity is that you're doing for the party as well. If you send evites or online invitations, that's usually the best way, because if you don't invite the whole class, then other kids usually won't know about it. But if you've got, if you send out like a traditional invitations and 3 kids are not invited, then they'll feel bad. And sometimes they don't even make it. Like I know with my son, he was invited to a party I didn't even know, because the invitation never came home.
Right.
So it's always, I find, easier to do like online or even a text. At this day and age, it's okay to do that, yeah.
Now that is a really excellent point. Yeah. You can have the most beautiful invitation, but you have no idea if it's going to reach the intended receiver, right?
Exactly.
So should we be sending it with the child to the parent? What do you think about that?
I think usually what happens is you bring them to school and you'll ask the teacher, do you mind putting them, in the kids' backpacks so they can take them home? But yeah, you probably also want to do a follow-up if you haven't heard back. Have you, I sent an invitation, just wanted to make sure you received it, because especially if you're reserving a space, you want to make sure that you know how many heads, you're paying for for the party. So if you don't know your numbers, which is also very important, that's why you need to RSVP if you've been invited to a party as well, so that the birthday organizer knows, how many are coming for sure.
RSVPs.
Yes.
What is the etiquette around that these days? Because not everybody thinks the same on that.
Yeah, I think definitely RSVP is important for sure. I think because you've got to let them know who's coming, and you don't want to have any surprises on the day of. I've seen some birthday parties where people don't RSVP and then they just show up with like their whole family. And so, yeah, it's just common courtesy to just say, yes, we're coming, or sorry, we can't make it, just so that, they know how many people to expect.
So you've sent the invite out, yes. You've RSVP'd, and all of a sudden you've got a whole family that shows up to your child's birthday party. Yeah. What are the rules around that? Should the parent ask if they can attend the child's birthday party?
You can ask. I would say if you've sent out an invitation with the person's name on that, it's very specific, that's for so-and-so to come. Sometimes parents have younger children, so they bring them along, and I definitely would say you should probably ask, ahead of time, is it okay if I can bring, my son or daughter's sibling, just so that there is no surprises. If they show up the day of, it's up to you. It's your discretion, because if you've already paid for a certain amount of kids to be there, that's you can just say politely, unfortunately, this was our limit. This is the amount of people we can have, so we can't have them attend. And I know sometimes parents want to stay as well. And again, up to your discretion. I've seen some parties when the kids are smaller and the parents stay, and it's actually helpful because they help manage like the food and but you also, if they're going to stay, you want to make sure you feed them too. So there's but then some people don't want the parents there because they feel like they're interfering. So really it's personal preference.
Now, when we're talking about food, because that is obviously the central piece of any great birthday party for children, definitely, We're also talking about allergies more and more these days,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
I've heard of stories where kids are invited and 5 of them show up with EpiPens. And obviously it's a concern for both parties. So what would you suggest to parents, both the people throwing the party and the parents attending, if their child has food allergies?
So first off, if I'm the person throwing the party, I would definitely ask that in the invitation. Does your son or daughter have any allergies? And then if the answer is yes, obviously you want to know exactly what that is. There's a couple things you can do. You can say, well, if you contact the parent directly and ask, what is it that you supply for your son or daughter who has allergies to dairy or eggs? Is there something else that I can give them as a substitute? Or if you like to bake, is there like a recipe that you use that that you make a cake that's allergy free for your son or daughter if you want to go to that extent? I've also seen parents come with their own like little treats for their own son or daughter so that they can also be part of the celebration eating the cake, but it's something that they've brought that they know for sure has, no dairy, no peanuts, or whatever it is that they're allergic to.
Anything else to keep in mind in terms of food allergies when you're going to a restaurant? Let's say it's not in your home and it's being held somewhere.
Yeah, I think
else?
you need to. You probably should ask. What when you let's say you do it at a restaurant. I would say Chuck E. Cheese, or whatever. But let's say you do to one of those places. You definitely want to ask ahead of time. What is in the food? Most places will tell you. If there's something that, if it's like a peanut-free zone or that sort of thing. But definitely important to find out, because the last thing you want to do is have somebody have an allergic reaction, at your party. So, yeah.
And if that were to happen, who would be liable?
See, that is something that probably a lawyer could you have a conversation with. That I don't know, and that's why I think it's so important to kind of cover your bases beforehand by asking all those important questions. And if you're really, really worried about it, you could even ask the parents, can you bring something for them to eat so that I'm not there, and we can sit them aside, or just don't serve that at the party. If they have allergies for peanuts, make it a peanut free. They do it at school, so you can do it in your home as well.
It's definitely a big issue these days.
For sure.
Also, creative but a source of stress for some people planning birthday parties, loot bags.
Yes.
So what would you have to say about that these days? I mean, there's so much to cover here in terms of, are they still necessary?
Everybody, again, loves to get gifts. I think kids love getting loot bags. There's a lot of garbage, like plastic that goes into loot bags. And I think, at this day and age, I think we could try to mitigate that. And there's other things you can give, as a substitute for a loot bag. Some things I've seen done is, books. You can give a book. I know that sounds kind of boring, but like something that's in their age range for reading. You could do cute, I did a panda birthday party once where I found panda socks. So we put those in the loot bag. Things that are useful and cute. You could do bath bombs if it's a spa party. You could do masks, hand sanitizer. Those are all things that their kids can use, but maybe it coincides with the theme of the party. So it kind of all works in together.
Now, on the subject of loot bags in a COVID world, I mean, there's the whole notion of, do we really even want to assemble them and then take them to somebody else's home? Is that an issue, do you think, that will continue?
I would think that's past now. I think people are okay with taking, something, you go to the grocery store, you bring your food home. I remember when COVID first started, I was wiping everything down with wipes, and now it's kind of so I think it's, the nice thing about having a little loot bag or a little gift for them to take home is, that they feel like they've received something from the party. And it also doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy something. If your birthday party, let's say, is held at a pottery studio, maybe the gift is the thing that they made at the studio. So you don't necessarily have to, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You don't have to get a whole bunch of stuff to give away. The craft that they made could be part of the loot bag.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
At-home birthday parties.
Yes.
There's going to be people returning to that. I mean, I think they're the best for a whole bunch of reasons. But what can parents do? Because it's a lot of stress and a lot of organization that's required when you're doing it in your own home. What can you suggest to make that process seamless?
Well, I would say definitely, again, try and have some sort of theme that your kids are interested in. If it's Minecraft, if it's, a spa party. So that would be sort of where you build the activities around. And if you have like 4 or 5 different activities, and Pinterest, any of the, like Google, any of those, you could find tons of activities that could be based around the theme. And then I would even say, like, if you've got a broomstick handy, you can always do the limbo or, freeze tag. Like, if you think you're going to run out of things to do, just, freeze tag or freeze dance. There's lots of, you can always throw in an extra couple of activities like that where kids could keep themselves entertained. And the other thing is, kids also just want to play. So you don't necessarily have to fill that time with, activity. They could just play with they could play with toys or because I think we in this day and age we really overschedule a lot of the time, so just letting them run around in the backyard if you have the space for it, or scavenger hunt in the backyard is also an easy thing to do.
Lots of great suggestions for parents to keep their sanity and actually enjoy the process of,
exactly.
of birthday party planning. Tanya Todd, founder of Bug and Bird Events, thank you so much for your time today.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.